Intensifying unrest in Iran this Friday night. What the regime is now doing to suppress protesters, the pleas for the U.S. president to intervene, and what Iranian Canadians are hoping will happen. ICE under fire for 2 shootings. The skepticism over what the White House is claiming.
This was a crime in broad daylight, and the attempt to cover it up is another.
And the newly released video of the deadly confrontation in Minneapolis. Canada's flu fight, the good news from public health authorities. Plus, Goal Squad.
I am filled with nothing but excitement and confidence.
Who scored a role on Canada's Olympic women's hockey team.
Global National, reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. More anti-government protests are unfolding in Iran tonight as the Islamic Republic struggles to contain weeks of widespread unrest. Clashes between demonstrators and authorities have left dozens dead, including members of the security forces, according to Iranian officials. Authorities have also cut off internet and phone access in parts of the country. And as the regime vows to punish protesters without any leniency, U.S. President Donald Trump is once again threatening to intervene. Redmond Shannon has our top story tonight.
Destroying a police kiosk in a police state. A rising anger over 2 weeks in Iran that has ignited. Across every province in the country, the crowds grow. Men and women in over 100 cities demanding change, even burning statues of lauded military figures. Dozens have been killed in the first 12 days, including some security forces, according to authorities. Protests that began over financial hardship have now become about regime change, some even chanting death to the dictator, referring to the Islamic Republic's supreme leader. Addressing supporters Friday, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called demonstrators vandals who are destroying their country to please the U.S. president.
I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts.
Trump, however, brushed off a suggestion he could meet with the man many Iranians hope could lead the country. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the Shah deposed in 1979, asked for Trump's support Friday, rallying Iranians to continue marching despite threats from the judiciary of a harsh crackdown that came alongside an internet and phone blackout Friday.
Tonight is very important, and again, it's really a rapidly developing situation.
This Iranian analyst says while many Iranians feel they have little to lose, others will be wary.
People may coalesce around the idea of an end to the Islamic Republic, but they will need to see an alternative. And if that alternative isn't there, it might cause some people to think twice.
What happens in the coming days may prove crucial in deciding Iran's future. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Iranians here in Canada are now even more worried about what's unfolding in their home country as they're unable to reach their loved ones because of the communications blackout. But that hasn't stopped them from rallying in solidarity with protesters there as the movement has sparked renewed hopes for change. Heidi Petrachik reports.
Iranian Canadians at this rally in Halifax sing their country's de facto anthem as they gather in support of massive protests in Iran, calling for the dismantlement of the Iranian Islamic regime.
If Islamic Republic goes, the world would be a much better place. Our people, Iranian people, are standing firm everywhere.
People here are also worried about family back home because of Iran's internet blackout.
We cannot contact them. We cannot use any internet, any emails, any social media. Even the landline is done.
The Halifax event among similar ones held in cities around the world.
This may be a smaller gathering here in Halifax, but tomorrow community members are organizing much larger rallies at locations across the country, including in Toronto and Montreal.
All triggered by initial protests that began in Iran last month, which ramped up into the biggest wave of dissent in Iran in several years.
What's really significant about these protests is their scale is the fact that they are taking place all over the country.
The voices calling for the end of Ayatollah Khamenei's regime and the return of the exiled son of Iran's last Shah echoing in Canada.
It tells you that there is a lot of appetite for regime change. B, people are nostalgic for what they lost as a result of the Islamic Revolution.
It's not just about Iran. I think everyone is involved in this right now.
Atifa Tabesh fled the regime and came to Canada 3 decades ago, leaving extended family behind. She's now daring to hope she could someday go back.
I lost being with my family for last 30 years. I had 3 children here. They were all born here. I didn't have a chance to share that joy with everyone. So it means a lot.
The same wish expressed by others, wondering if the outcome of this latest unrest will be different than before. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
New video is emerging from Minneapolis of the moments leading up to the shooting death of Renee Good. It was captured by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent at the center of the shooting on Wednesday. And a warning, viewers may find the video disturbing.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Whoa!
The Department of Homeland Security says Good was impeding law enforcement and weaponized her vehicle, and the ICE agent acted in self-defense. The different narratives on what was happening and whether lethal force was justified has set off a wave of anger across the U.S. The Minnesota Timberwolves basketball team held a moment of silence before their game last night, and cheers erupted when someone yelled, "Go home, ICE."
Thank you.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz declared today a day of unity, encouraging acts of service in honor and remembrance of Renee Good. State and local officials are asking to be involved in the federal investigation around her death. But as Jackson Proskow reports from Minneapolis, they're being shut out.
The clash over federal immigration enforcement has turned into a fight over the investigation into the shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good.
We in Minneapolis want a fair investigation.
Local officials say the federal government has shut them out of a probe into the actions of Jonathan Ross, the veteran ICE agent who shot and killed the unarmed U.S. citizen.
This was a crime in broad daylight, and the attempt to cover it up is another.
And if you got nothing to hide from, then don't hide from it. Include local experts in the process.
The Trump administration has sought to define the story of what happened from the outset and refuses any interpretation but its own.
And she was an agitator, a very high-level agitator, so professional. She wouldn't stop screaming. I said, this isn't a normal situation.
That has prompted nationwide protests over ICE and the lack of transparency in the Minneapolis shooting.
You can see what happened, and they are trying to rewrite history. They're doing it for a reason, and we all know why.
In Portland, Oregon, that anger hangs over the scene of yet another shooting involving federal agents. Thursday, 2 people were shot by Border Patrol. Federal officials say the suspects tried to weaponize their vehicle during a pursuit. Homeland Security says they are associates of a Venezuelan gang.
We know what the federal government says happened here. There was a time when we could take them at their word. That time is long past. That is why we are calling on ICE to halt all operations in Portland.
But the White House is instead doubling down, vowing to proceed with its aggressive immigration agenda. In Minneapolis, ICE continues to surge agents into the city, with 2,000 officers now on the ground. Despite being shut out of the federal probe, the state of Minnesota says it's opening its own parallel investigation into the death of Renee Good. At the same time, the Trump administration says it's reopening thousands of refugee cases in the state of Minnesota, subjecting those immigrants to renewed scrutiny of their legal status in the United States. Neetu?
Jackson Proskow in Minneapolis. Thanks, Jackson. U.S. officials say they've seized a fifth sanctioned oil tanker. The Olena was boarded by U.S. Marines in the Caribbean Sea today. U.S. Southern Command says the seizure was without incident. President Donald Trump says the tanker is now on its way back to Venezuela and its oil will be sold. Trump met with oil industry executives today at the White House. He's promising them total safety while pushing for $100 billion to be invested in Venezuelan oil operations. Exxon's CEO told Trump he could have a team on the ground in the next couple of weeks. All this as Venezuela's interim government is seeking peace with Trump by releasing political prisoners. Jeff Semple reports from neighboring Colombia.
Venezuelan political prisoners embraced their freedom. Facing U.S. pressure, the Venezuelan regime announced Thursday it would release a significant number of political prisoners in the coming hours. A small group were freed overnight, mostly Spanish citizens, including Rocio San Miguel, a prominent security expert and vocal critic of Nicolas Maduro.
Estamos aquí exigiendo.
We are demanding the release of all political prisoners, says this mother whose son is being detained. Human rights groups say more than 1,000 political prisoners are currently in Venezuelan jails, including journalists, lawyers, and activists. Hundreds of family members gathered outside the prisons, hoping their loved ones might be coming next.
Estamos acá desde ayer en vivo.
We have been here since yesterday. We're all on edge waiting for news, this relative says. But by Friday afternoon, 24 hours after the government's announcement, rights groups say only 11 prisoners had been released.
Por lo que nos preocupa altamente.
We are highly concerned that the international media are talking about the release of political prisoners when in reality only a small portion, less than 1% of the population has been released, says Marta Tineo, who runs a Venezuelan advocacy group.
It has been like an illusion.
Luis Peche Arteaga is a political activist who fled Venezuela last year after his friend, journalist Carlos Marcano, was arrested. Arteaga now lives here in Colombia. In October, as he was leaving his home with a friend, 3 masked gunmen were waiting for them.
Without saying any words, they started shooting at us.
Arteaga was shot 6 times, but incredibly, both he and his friend survived.
It's kind of a miracle.
No one was arrested, but Arteaga believes the Venezuelan regime was responsible, and he's highly suspicious of the regime's promise to free its political prisoners.
There's like a policy that has been known in Venezuela, a revolving door policy. They release some opposition members while at the same time they took some other people and put them into jail.
But one person who seems pleased with the progress is the U.S. president.
We asked him to do that and they've been great.
Donald Trump called the prisoners' release a very important sign that the Venezuelan government was seeking peace. He also said he was canceling plans for a second strike on the regime. Trump also revealed he planned to meet with Venezuela's exiled opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, at the White House next week. Machado's party is widely credited with winning the 2024 presidential election, which Maduro refused to concede. But last weekend, Trump dismissed questions about Machado playing a leadership role in Venezuela's political transition. That is, until after Machado offered this week to gift Trump her Nobel Peace Prize.
And I look forward to saying hello to her, and I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor.
The U.S. and Venezuelan governments are now taking steps to reestablish diplomatic missions in both countries. U.S. officials arrived in Caracas today to begin reopening the embassy there, which was closed 7 years ago. Neithu?
Jeff Semple in Bogota, Colombia. Thanks, Jeff. Russia fires a hypersonic missile, coming up its latest attack on Ukraine despite all the efforts to reach a peace deal. The federal government is deploying the military to Pimachikamak Cree Nation in Manitoba to assist repairs after a days-long power outage devastated the community. The Emergency Management and Community Resilience Minister says a specialized team will provide targeted assessment and advisory support for water treatment, sewage systems, and power generation. Thousands of residents have fled the community since a power line snapped last month, leading to outages and freezing temperatures, which caused water pipes to burst, affecting hundreds of homes. The nation's chief welcomed the announcement and is reminding residents CAF members are coming to help rebuild faster. Former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland has now resigned as an MP to work as an economic advisor to Ukraine. Freeland says it's been an immense honor to serve her Toronto area constituents and Canadians for more than a decade. Her resignation could trigger a by-election as early as March. The riding is considered a safe seat for the Liberal Party, now 2 seats short of a majority. At least 4 people have been killed in a new wave of Russian airstrikes on Ukraine. It involves a nuclear-capable missile that targeted energy infrastructure and homes. Prime Minister Mark Carney has joined European leaders in condemning Russia's use of the powerful weapon. Candace Cole reports on the dangerous escalation in tensions.
Civilians in Kyiv are without electricity or running water following Russian drone strikes overnight on Ukraine's capital. Moscow also launched its hypersonic Oreshnik missile, hitting Lviv just 60 kilometers away from the border with Poland. Russia's defense ministry says it was a response to a drone attack on President Vladimir Putin's residence last month. Ukraine denies carrying out the strike, and an American CIA assessment found Ukraine didn't target Putin.
It is obviously a bit of a warning sign, not only to Ukraine, but also the rest of Europe. Within Europe, there's only a very limited capability that can be effectively utilized against this type of threat.
This marks the second time Russia has launched the Oreshnik, a medium-range ballistic missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads up to 5,500 kilometers. The first was launched in 2024 in Dnipro. This latest escalation comes after weeks of talks among Ukraine, the U.S., and European member states trying to reach a peace deal with Russia.
I'm very disappointed. I settled 8 wars. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack or maybe one of the easier ones.
But experts say
Russians are trying to derail the negotiations toward a ceasefire, towards an end of the war. They don't want that. They've indicated that again with this latest attack.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky re-amplifying calls for a joint air defense system with its neighboring European allies and demanding more action from the U.S., which he says Russia truly pays attention to.
This blatant attack on Ukraine's civilians should indicate to President Trump that he needs to stop this war, and he needs to stop it by putting pressure on Putin.
Just last month, EU leaders agreed to loan Ukraine $106 billion to aid in their defense against Russia. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
Flu season ahead, what the latest infection tracking suggests about the risk of getting sick. The spread of flu in Canada appears to finally be waning, according to new data from public health authorities. Test positivity for influenza dropped to 27% in the week ending January 3rd. It had hit a high of 33% around Christmas time. 27% is still very high, however, and near peak levels of prior seasons. Hospitalizations remain steady. Canada's economy created more jobs than expected to end 2025, but a boost in the number of people looking for work drove the unemployment rate higher. Unemployment hit 6.8% in December, up from 6.5% in November. 8,200 jobs were added, topping expectations of a small decline in jobs. Most economists say the numbers don't move the needle enough for the Bank of Canada to raise or lower interest rates in its next decision at the end of this month. South of the border, hiring also slumped just before the new year, according to a U.S. federal jobs report. That country added 50,000 jobs in December, a drop from 64,000 in the previous month. Overall, 2025 saw a huge slowdown for hiring, with 49,000 jobs added on average each month, compared to an average of 168,000 in 2024. Defending Canada's gold. Next, meet the women of our 2026 Olympic hockey team. The members of Canada's Olympic women's hockey team were announced today, and experience will not be in short supply in Italy next month. 16 of the 23 women were on our gold medal winning team at the last Olympics. But as Eric Sorensen reports, Canada will face a tough opponent in the American team.
Sarah Nurse, Hamilton, Ontario.
With youngsters doing the honors, Canada's best players in Canada's favorite sport were announced.
Marie-Philippe Poulin, Postville, Quebec.
Veterans like Marie-Philippe Poulin will lead the team, but 7 first-timers will also play. Returning Olympian Renata Fast is thrilled for them.
To have earned this opportunity to forever be called an Olympian, something that all of us have dreamt since we were very young.
Expectations always run high when it comes to hockey in this country, but there is added anxiety this year. The Canadian women's team was utterly dominated by the Americans in the recent rivalry series. The U.S. team with rising stars ready to challenge the Canadians for Olympic supremacy.
This past quad has been full of ups and downs and a lot of change for our sport. But I would say the one thing that has never changed within our group is our passion, our connection, the heart that we all have.
The American success has been evident in recent years. The U.S. has won 7 of the last 10 world championships. But when it comes to the ultimate, the Olympics, every 4 years, the Canadian women have more often risen to the occasion, winning 5 of the 7 gold medals that have been awarded since 1998. Coach Troy Ryan hopes his players can learn from recent results to be ready for the biggest games of all next month.
We're not just preparing for the U.S., we're preparing for every country. But we also got to get better, so if we do find ourselves in that gold medal game, that we're ready.
Canada has a habit of shining in the biggest moments, says this former Olympian.
Chemistry and character, I think, are 2 things that can take a team a long way. And I do think that this group has the capacity now to handle adversity and to use it to their advantage.
Cassie Campbell-Pascal says professional women's hockey is relatively new, but is bringing more parity to the game. Countries like Finland, Sweden, and Czechia could surprise. But there is nothing to compare with the decades-long, no-love-lost hockey rivalry between Canada and the USA, where the only satisfaction will be a gold medal. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Charlottetown's Big Red Numbers marking 2026. Thanks for watching and hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.